In the last video, I showed you how to connect your Flux Lora to automated dashboard. I have different videos where I show how to train your Lora using replicate or file and so on. So for example, this is the example of a product named Shelfie, and I wanted to see it in the forest. So I said Shelfie in the forest, and it's pre-trained. It's pre-trained on my Lora. Perfect. So in the last video, I also showed you how to connect your pre-trained LoRa's using Make and Airtable to a dashboard. So I created this really cool dashboard where you could just add a record and it automatically generate 4 different images based on your prompt. Okay, this is an actual product for an actual client that is using it right now for their e-commerce brand. And that client told me, hey, Yuval, listen, generating these images are great, but I need the option to do small fixes to my images. For example, he said, listen, this image, this one is great, but you know what, this specific shelf on the side doesn't make a lot of sense, and because it can't go here in this pegboard, and also I don't like this specific shelf. Okay, so now we need to use another feature. We need to do the inpaint, and in order to do that, you can do it extremely manually in the file and dashboard, which is something that it's quite simple. You go, you press inpaint, and then you need to pick the image. On top of that, you need to pick the inpaint areas, and then basically you can just change the image based on the mask that you've created on top of it. I took this tutorial by my friend of mine, Avis, and he showed me exactly how to do it. And I thought to myself, that could be a great idea to automate it. So basically what I did is to create this other dashboard, and let me show you how I do it. Let's say that I want to create an inpaint for this image. So I save the image, I go to my fixes dashboard. Now I need to go to Canva and create that mask. So I just pick the image, and now I have this image. Now I need to create a mask on top of it. The way it works, quite simply, you have many tutorials on that as well. I take the white color, press the weight right here, and that's what I want to change. And also this is something I want to change. Perfect. Now I need to go to the design and pick position, layers. Now I can already delete this image, and this is my masking image. Okay, I need to put it on top of the original image, and then it will create the mask. So I press share, I download the image, go back to my dashboard, I add a record, and this is my fixed dashboard. So now I need to say something like, please remove the shelf. I put the original image first, and then I put the mask in paint second. I need to send it to Make, which is how I build this automation. Let me just press run once, and let's just run it. Now I'm supposed to get, let's see how it's going to work. Okay, so I can already see that I got the data from Airtable right here. It's reading the record right here. Then it created a JSON file that actually asks for the API to the inpaint command. Then it's waiting because it takes some time to generate the images, so we don't want it to bring back, you know, like empty data. And there you have it. Done. Going back to Airtable, and there you go. You could easily see that I have here the original image, and then 4 different images with the inpaint. Sometimes it's work okay, sometimes it doesn't work well, but you still need to do that cherry picking. So that's more or less about how to do the inpainting after you've built the dashboard. Quite cool, right? Let's jump right in and I'll show you exactly how to build it. So the first thing you need to do, go back to the database of Airtable. What I like to do is just to create a new table. I call this table fixes. I left area here for the model, so I could just add the change. Then another column with the original image, another column with the fixes where I upload the mask, and then another column where I could actually see the output. Here you could see the send to Make. So how does it actually send stuff to Make? I created another video about it where I show you how to send a webhook to make. Personally, I like to do it. There are many ways to do it, but the way that I like to do it is by pressing automations, and then I just press when record enters the view. So I create two different views, one that calls the grid view, one that calls send to make, and I create a filter in that view. And only when you have the checkbox send to make on, that's basically I trigger the automation. So you create a filter and send, and where send to make is checked, show it to me. So if it wasn't checked, it wouldn't be here. And if I will check it again, it will trigger an automation. So when record enters a view, you can see here that it said when fixes and the view is sent to make, trigger the automation. Simple as that. Afterwards, you have a code you need to run. I have a video, completely different video about just that specific script, which is about sending a webhook to make. Simple as that. You copy and paste the webhook, the script, and so on. And you need just to follow that video. I will link it in the comments so you'll have it. And then we've built some kind of a trigger automation. You press, click, boom, it sends the data to make. So what you need to do is to create a new scenario with make. And you need to make sure that the first module of that scenario would be a webhook. If I would have to build it from scratch, I would create a new scenario. Let's just call it test, and then we can pick a webhook, custom webhook. It gives you a URL, and that's the URL that you're going to use, and you're just going to copy that to your clipboard. Then you'll have to paste it in the script. That's about it. You've built a webhook. The next thing you want to do is to build an Airtable get a record, and then make sure that obviously it's connected and authenticated and so on. You go to your Airtable connection base, you pick the right base. For me, it's the Shelfie base. And what you need to do is to pick the right record from the right table. So I press fixes and then record ID. I say record ID should be looped from here. Then you get actually the data from Airtable. You get the URL of the image, of the original image, and then the URL of other image, the URL of the mask. When you got both of them, you now could basically loop them inside of the API. Now API calls are scary. I'm not a developer. I don't know how to create API calls. But what I do know is that I could use AI to create a code for me that will basically do the API call for me. So in order to do that, I went into inpainting of Flux inside of file. I pressed inpainting and then API. I picked also HTTP, and I have here some kind of a structure for the API call that I could basically loop here an image URL and loop here a mask URL. Sounds familiar? Right, sounds familiar. Why is that? Because we have that data on Airtable. So what if we'll tell to Claude, hey, listen, I want you to take this structure of the API and I want you to take the data from Airtable with the name, which is the prompt, with the original URL, with the mask URL. I want you also to take this path, and this path, by the way, is my pre-trained LoRa, which you have to take. Let's say that this is your model. You can check. I press run interface. Here I see this is Shelfie free. This is actually my model. So what I can do is to go to show files and then diffuse LoRa file, copy the link, and that's basically the path to my LoRa. So I can go back to make and put it here. Okay, and that basically would be the LoRa that I could trigger, the pre-trained LoRa. That's the file. So what I say here to Claude is, hey, this is the JSON. I need you to put all of these variables from Airtable and use this specific LoRa, telling it, hey, I want you to prompt here a JSON file out of it. That's about it. So once it's actually happening, you can see that the output that was generated, if I press here, you can actually see that you have here the API call. So the next thing you want to do is to create an API call, an HTTP request. That's how you do it. You press plus, HTTP, you put the HTTP, and then you need to make a request. Then you need to make sure that you make the request in the right places. How do you do that? So first of all, you need the URL. The URL that we're using here is the URL of file inpainting. Where did I find it? And you have different apps that you're using. different apps, and one of them is the inpainting one. You could use the regular one, which I used in the first video, in the first connection, but this is the inpainting one. And that one have a very specific API call. I go to the API tab right here, and I could see that it has this URL, and that's the URL that I'll be using in my API call. Okay, I'm not a tech guy, I'm not a developer, but that's how I work. Now, the next thing you want to do is the method. So the method is going to be post, because you want to post. You can read about APIs if you want, but we'll do post. Then you need to authenticate the connection. Just follow my lead here. Header, the need to be authorization. And then you have to have this key. So you need to write the word key, and then you need to grab your API, your token, your key. How do you do that? You go to your account, then you go to API keys, and you basically add a key. You generate yourself a key, and once you generated the key, you could just drop it. You could just drop it right here, and that will be your key. Body type should be raw. It should be a JSON file, because that's the content that we're getting from Claude, and that's it. You loop it right here, and that's how you loop the API call. AI wrote the JSON, and you put here the output of that. Okay, so you put here this data. This is the output this time. So it's going to put it here, and that's basically making the API call. The next thing you want to do is to create a delay module. It's going to call sleep. And then I could see that it takes some time to generate. So if I have here the requests, I see that the duration is 15 seconds. So maybe I'll pick 20 seconds just in case, because I want to make sure that it will grab the right data from my automation. So you can pick here, I pick 35 just to make sure. Then you're going to get a very crazy raw URLs chunk of data, and I want to organize that. So what I did here, I create another Claude model. That's the one. And I said to it, hey, I want you to take this chunk of data, and I want you to take all of the URLs and separate them by a comma. Why is that? Because when it's separated by a comma, I could afterwards create the output for different URLs, URLs 1, URL 2, URL 3, URL 4. Okay, how did I do that? I created a text parser. So you go to the text parser match pattern. Right here, you need to create a pattern. I don't know how to write this pattern. So I went into Claude and I took a screenshot, and I was like, hey, I need you to take this chunk of data and output these 4 URLs with a text parser using make. Write me the formula. And it actually did write me the formula. I am going to share with you the blueprints in case you're interested. Just follow the newsletter, and you'll be notified first with a waiting list to all of my blueprints. So like and subscribe, sign up to the newsletter, and in the future I will give you my blueprints as well. You need to pick here global match, no, case sensitive, yes, and this is Claude told me to do. Okay, multi-line, no, single line, no, continue the execution, no, and the text. It takes the text with the chunk of data from here, and the separation by commas, it actually did it. So you can see here 4 different URLs separated by commas, and then the text parser literally took it and created 4 different modules. Now, to be honest, I created here 4 different HTTP requests because I thought that will help me with the output of my URL, but it actually didn't. So what I did here, I created Airtable, go to my the same record. So the record ID will be the exact same record that triggered the automation, and I update a record. And then I tell it to go to the output column, and update 4 different images. File URL 1, file URL 2, and this is for the match from the match pattern module, and file URL 4. Perfect. Music to my ears. Amazing. So that's about it, and then it's actually updating that module. That's more or less about it. That's the make automation that create this crazy interface that basically help you to fix your images and so on. If you have any more questions, let me know, and I'll see you on the next video.